Well, thanks for coming. There we go. That's just how I just started. Thanks for coming this morning to my virtual office as I float in a nice beige room here. My name is Matt Wallrath, and I serve as the Wisconsin First Detector Network Coordinator for the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Been doing this for a little over 2 years, and the program's about 12 years old, and we every year write in to work with tribes as we can to share resources and also to learn from what you guys are doing and be an ally as best we can. So good to be here. I always enjoy the Melissa's great to work with, and just the general vibe. And it does feel important to talk and to listen to the sovereign nations. So I'm happy to be part of that. So I know that you guys represent all the nations. This is the one welcome word that I've learned convincingly. So bozu. And thanks again for having me. And I know that hopefully we can bring this back to whatever tribe it is that you came from. And thanks for the quick introductions earlier. You can see our little logo there, and we do focus on plants and insects. And I was talking earlier about how my money comes from the APHIS pest protection and quarantine section, and they have a focus often on high consequence pests such as bugs, insects, diseases, things that are going to be moving in that way. And our overlay is something like this. So we have our lab with Mark Renz does alfalfa stuff, agronomy. We do some silvopasture, and you're looking at how that how cattle and other things can affect either invasive species control, and also looking at rotations and things like that. I myself I'm more of an ecologist. I'm in the natural areas and specialize with invasive plants, really invasive, or I should say non-local beings of all kind. And so this is sort of our little tagline here. And you will see some QR codes pop up here and there that you could take a picture of your screen, but I can get this a PDF of this to Melissa, and she can share it with y'all so that there's not too many links that are very complicated, but they should work from the PDF version. You can click on them. So yeah, and also we're not saying citizen science. We're saying community science or participatory science. Language is important, and I am not a citizen of the United Nations, but I can still help make reports. And, people from Canada can come down here, or from Nicaragua or whatever. We don't really care, as long as you're doing community science. And, that's the kind of thing where we have lots of eyes, lots of people putting stuff in, some professionals, some practitioners, some volunteers, all kinds of folks. So it's pretty inclusive in that way. And we have to kind of pick our projects based around what our network can do. So this is me here, bottom left, and yeah, so I've done a bunch of stuff as a private person, as a practitioner. I have a BS in biology. I have a MS in environmental conservation from UW-Madison Nelson Institute. I was the outreach specialist and regulation specialist for the invasive species rule for the DNR for a while. I'm a AmeriCorps, did two terms of service, and as a supervisor for about a year and a half, and then had my own business for 3 years, and big into youth education. So helped found a conservation corps, and really cool program in the San Juans in Washington State, where I got to be part of a commission of people that were doing land bank work. So that's over here, and that's so got to help steward land and protect parts as an appointed official, and done some water work too. So hopefully I know what I'm talking about. I definitely know that I can be wrong, gracefully at this point in my career, so I'm fine with that. So this is kind of what I'm generally interested in, and but forest, could be river, could be lake, could be dry prairie. I guess I kind of have a woody invasive tilt here on this stuff. But yeah, I want to see our ecology thrive. And what we realize is that this nice walking trail is very different than this trail of barberry, which will rip you up as you walk through it. It's pretty gnarly. kind of here some talking points about why. And so these slides, I have not taken the time to make them agree with the language of the tribes, which is to say, non-local beings versus invasive species, invasive plants. So I do recognize that difference, and I'm training myself to say it correctly, but the slides don't necessarily reflect that because, reduce, reuse, recycle. So in particular, as you all might know, if you've got stuff in your understory that's not native and it's like buckthorn and it's choking out stuff, the nutrient density is not the same. The way that things go together with food webs and with protecting our trout, with all the aquatic stuff going on. This is the bird point here, which is people always ask me, aren't they? Can't we save the buckthorn for the birds? And the answer is like, well, the buckthorn hasn't been here very long. The birds have been here for very long, and they actually do better without the buckthorn. Just trust us. And they're not very nutrient, but they do spread very quickly too. So, you can just see the kind of the nutrients are different, and so supporting our oaks, and I like to think of it stewarding that way, as like we're trying to support our oak savannas and our rare communities and our ecologically important places. And because they support so much life and so much diversity around us, versus things that are planted. This is from a book. They say ginkgo has 0 things that eat it. I don't think that's actually true. I think something probably eats it, but yeah. So looking at why it's important to just to kind of, these are kind of talking points. Hopefully you can preach. I'm preaching to the choir right now, but if these are things you kind of put in your book of talking to people why they should care about non-local beings here. So. Barberry is associated with ticks and Lyme's disease, so that's not cool. So I talk to lots of different landowners and managers, and it's important to have different talking points that suit the crowd. Could be a fisherman, right? That's the whole aquatic thing. So we're gonna blast through this, but I like to people, especially for interns, people that are new to the way that this is dealt with in the state. We do have a rule, and it makes these 3 things make something into a invasive plant or an invasive species. Also has to be non-native, and naturalized is a little bit kind of maybe incorrect, because we do have things that are not naturalized we consider invasive species, but it's sort of the ability that it could move here and naturalize and be a long-term threat. If something could be a real threat but it would die every winter and it's not going to establish, then it's not quite as important to consider, especially for plants. So here's the statuette, and we do have the widest rule in the United States. So we have all different taxa, from insects to plants to the feral swine, and that means we have the ability to talk about these with the same language. So these would be your definition of non-local beings according to the state of Wisconsin. And here's one that I always like to pick on because it'll give you burns, right? So this is a great example of causing that harm. And so if you see those words again, that cause economic or environmental harm or harm to human health, right? So those are the buzzwords. So while parsnip both is not great for our ecology, but it also will give you these photosynthetic burns. Only the sap, you get the sap on you, and it becomes activated by UV light, and it will burn you. So watch out for that. That fits the bill, right? And it's not just me. As a regulation specialist back in the day, I did have to talk to. We were making the listings and the groups for what was going to be considered invasive. And in fact, I called Mike and got him on my species assessment group, which was a great win for my program, and I think the state of Wisconsin's process in general. So. So we kind of look at we get our biologists and our stakeholders together, and the
Hey,
DNR.
Matt,
Yeah,
quick question.
sure.
I seen you had that picture of the wild parsnip. Where was that introduced from?
Oh, it is it's from, so it actually is basically the parsnip is the same plant as what you can eat from the ground. So it's like a Central Asian, I think, cultivar, and it's just a different version of it. You can actually eat the root is when it's young, and it's just a parsnip. The parsnips that we have that you get from the store with a big honking white root, they're almost genetically exactly the same. They just don't make. They've been more cultivated, so they don't make the the burning sap. So, and what's funny is invasive species that are non-local beings here they come from somewhere, and often our plants that are somewhat even um, maybe even rare here in Wisconsin are invasive somewhere else. And part of the narrative of being invasive is that you've escaped a lot of your predators and your pressures and your diseases and things like that. So I like to use the analogy of coffee and chocolate, because coffee was discovered by goats apparently in Africa. And chocolate is an ancient food of the Mayans, Central Americans, Incans. So it's from the neotropics, like South America. But they grow a lot of chocolate in Africa and a ton of coffee in Central America, and partially that's been very successful because they have escaped the diseases and things and know how to eat them. So when you have coffee beans up in the cloud forests and the tropical habitat of like Costa Rica, Costa Rican plants are not, and animals are not used to competing and dealing with coffee and eating it. So, and then same thing when you grow chocolate in Africa, a lot of the worst fungal diseases and insects that predate on that don't exist there. And so the same thing works with like our invasive species, except we don't eat them necessarily. Like purple loosestrife is a great example. We have a biocontrol for that. So purple loosestrife is not very invasive where it's from, in like central, it's the kind of Mediterranean area, kind of Europe, but because things keep it in check. Things know how to eat it. They use it as habitat. The diseases and funguses that are associated with everything are still there. So then you can bring purple loosestrife to Wisconsin, and it's a very pretty plant. Probably arrived by a ballast in a boat, like they were just off shooting some soil and rocks and water from somewhere up in the Great Lakes, up in the canals. But now it's unchecked, and nothing really knows how to eat it, on a ecological scale. So we then bring back its nemesis, the Neogaricella beetle, or Cella beetles for short. And we've been raising those, and those have become naturalized in Wisconsin. And now they eat the purple loosestrife for us. So we caught up with them with with one of their nemesis that's just only pretty much eats that one plant. And that was a lot of testing because they did like 10 years of a PhD for somebody to test in greenhouses if it ate anything else, it was going to be a danger. People ask me that often, and I will say we don't think so, but I'm kind of agnostic about it. I do know we do have like a native swamp loosestrife that it could eat, that this beetle could eat. It's sort of a threat analysis thing where we're like, well, if this is going to replace all the habitat of the swamp loosestrife anyways, and there's none of it, and everything else is going to be messed up. But you said you kind of, you can make problems by solving problems, which is true of many things. So, but yeah, thanks for the question. It's interesting. I think the narrative, and over half of all, maybe even, definitely over half of all things that we know to be invasive have been brought here because they are pretty or tasty, including like mystery, like so Chinese mystery snails, which are gigantic, they're like the size of a golf ball. They're edible, they're mucky. It's like you have to raise them properly, but they're brought for the food trade and all kinds of stuff. I mean, nature is amazing. Life is beautiful. So it's a blessing in its way. And that's why I'm not a zealot about it.
So just a couple weeks ago, we were releasing some of those beetles, and we actually had our communications person come out, take some nice pretty photos of us doing that and the release. First thing she does when she gets out her car is she goes right for the wild parsnip at the parking spot, and had to stop her. Like she got like within a foot and she was just gonna grab it, and I'm like, no. So then we had to go to a teaching moment. So
sure. I met her, I think, at Wisconsin Wetlands. What's her name?
Amber.
Amber. Yeah. I need to get on the newsletter. I shared that. She's awesome. It was good to meet her. So that I did the beetle rearing when I was at Upper Sugar River Watershed Association, and I was kind of skeptical, but it's really fun once you get into it. And I did it at a elementary school at the New Century which is a charter school in Verona, and the kids were super into it. And so I was like their mad scientist teacher. I taught them like 3 different times, and they had this big net, and they were mostly fascinated by the dandelions that were like growing the size of my arm. we have one of those. I was like, yeah, whatever, fine. They're like, hey, you had to ask Mr. Matt before, but they loved it, and they got to see the process, and we're there watering it and taking care of it. And then when you suck them up, when you take up the beetles, you kind of go in the field and you either shake them into like a funnel, or like you suck them into this little tube, a little Bunsen burner tube. You suck them up. And then what I told the kids is what's nice about the beetles is that they're taking this purple loosestrife plant. There it is, aspirator. Yep.
Sure. No, I'm
Yeah,
just kidding.
exactly. It's for tobacco use only. But it's so that what the whole thing is that they're doing what's considered to be not really very edible by most of our local insects, and the birds don't like it that much. They don't eat it, they don't really nest in it very successfully, and you're turning them into little brown M&Ms because they kind of look like little brown M&Ms. But then they asked me what they taste like, and I said Beetlejuice. Uh, and I did actually eat one because my screen failed, and I was like, they're like this yellow cookie. They're not very good, but the birds like them. Anyways, back to our previously scheduled program. But yeah, great questions. I appreciate the dialogue. Yeah, so the story here, if you're not familiar with the world of John Curtis and University of Wisconsin-Madison, Aldo Leopold kind of coined the term conservation back in the day, or so we like to claim. So his contemporary was John Curtis, and he did this kind of mapping and ordination, which is kind of associating this with that and this with that. Like these often occur together around the state, and look at geology and kind of wetness, dryness of soil, stuff like that. And he said basically, if it was here before the plow, and while we were doing like the plot mapping, and unfortunately, maybe not being as respectful to our treaties and other things as we could have been. I hope we are doing better with that now. But as the people were out there dropping pins and dropping stakes in the ground, and they would make a record of what was on the ground, and that was pretty good botanically in plants and animals. So that's considered, and then the knowledge of the indigenous people, and and your records and your practices, and saying, well, you've been using reed canary grass forever in your world, in your work, and in your lives. So it's probably native, but is it causing problems? And what so it's kind of a nebulous thing what we actually define as native. We do define ourselves as humans as native, which luckily, whenever I ask a bunch of kids, I like, well, are humans an invasive species? And they're like, yeah, we're the worst. And I'm sure eagle and beaver would agree that we're the worst, but we're all here together, right? All right, let me get back to my slide deck here. Okay. So all right, so this is talking about, this is University of Wisconsin, and we try to preach the way that the state treats stuff. So there's two regulated categories. So this is prohibited, which is the worst. So this is kudzu, never seen in the state, but will eat your yard, will destroy stuff. Probably can't overwinter here, but we're really concerned about it. So you can't possess that. And then things that are regulated, you can have them on your property legally, but you can't transport, transfer, introduce. As sovereign nations and under tribal management, you guys have your own rules and regulations, but you obviously do interact with the public, and stuff's going to come over the boundaries. As invasive species do not respect boundaries of counties or states or whatever. They just go where the soil is good, or where they can get some good fish, or whatever it is. So so things that are restricted, it's important because you can't sell them, you can't transport, transfer, or introduce them legally. So things like barberry that are out there, are widely sold in the landscaping trade, but we're trying to make it harder for people to buy those if they're going to be a problem in the state. Just yesterday, I was out in Williams Bay, and they of course had some barberry on their lakefront. I was like, you should kill all that because it's bad, makes ticks. But it is pretty. I get it. It's super thorny though. Ugh. Anyways, and this is garlic mustard, and so these are things we'll never be able to get rid of entirely in the state, or like very unlikely without another kind of disease or blight or whatever that would take them out. So you gotta focus your energy where it matters, and then seek alternatives. Use natives stuff as much as possible if you're doing landscaping or thinking about that. And don't forget to clean your gear. I know Green Bay loves its Phragmites. Well, it's a big fight up there. It's that tall grass. So it spreads by seed. So it's a really important thing to to think about and tell your crews, like, hey man, when you go through that big tall grass, you got to get off and knock the seeds off your deck. I know it's a pain, I know it's hot, but it's really important, and it's easier said than done, because the old guys running the tractors are a certain breed, you know what I mean, and or whatever, whoever it is, but they're stubborn and they're hot and they're tired and they got a lot to do. So this is where I need your help to tell your crews and remind them how important this is to stop stuff from spreading around, because it really is one of the main vectors. It's just big mowers, small mowers, things that are going to spread by fragments, especially. Okay, but now into the part you've been waiting for, I'm sure patiently, which is the actual resources I promised I would share. So we do have a ton of stuff on my various web pages. So we have videos that we make that you can look up Wifton, join our page, or just go to our web pages and find them. We do make these really comprehensive fact sheets for plants in particular. This is Mark, my boss, who has been doing this for many years. So it's going to go through kind of, non-chemical control, chemical control, does fire work, can you dig it out, what chemicals work better or work more consistently. So it's a good resource, and if you have questions about finding a particular one, I'm always happy to be there as a public person. But you can also, it's kind of right here in our resources page, and that's the website, rensweedscience.cal.wix.edu. If you just type Rens and last name and whatever plant it is, you might just find it by Google, because we're pretty well referenced. And in fact, the Wisconsin DNR is using some of the work from the lab that's going to be making recommendations on their website as well, even though we can't legally recommend any kind of companies or brands because we're the state, and that's just not cool. So they can't either. So you will find stuff on there, but take it with a grain of salt, make your own decisions, read the labels, etc. So yeah, we're also here to present, visual ID fact sheets too, so to kind of go along with the more technical stuff. So this is one that I made when I first started on the left, which is just a tree of heaven. So, the problem, something that's easy to digest, hopefully, for people that are new to the issue and can get going detecting stuff right away. So there are some other cool resources here for woody stuff. You go to this Woody Mesas of the Great Lakes Collaborative, and you can find, make your own kind of list from there, and they also kind of incorporate that, and it's got some nice drop downs, so worth checking out. You might know these ones from your area, and I think they're the ones that are kind of causing the most problems around Madison and in southeast Wisconsin, but everyone's got different parts of the world that they're dealing with. So I'm always curious to hear other people's like major understory threats, and I know we're also looking at lots of insect stuff, but they kind of correlate. So I'm not going to go into this very in depth because it's not the focus today, but honeysuckle, glossy common buckthorn, things like that can be real problems to our forests. Also a quick shot here from our old intern. You want to use an ID app? We actually are recommending PlantNet at this point because it's free, it's pretty good. Seek could be really good, but Seek also is just like, it's almost too easy and kind of not as accurate as we would like it to be. So anyways, if you have an Apple phone, the Apple phone app is really, really good for looking at stuff. It just seems to know the AI is good. All right, other tools. We have this is a cool thing that my predecessor designed, Ann Pierce, and it's on the tools page of my website, which is Wifton. Luckily, WIFDN is good IP, and if you just type that into Google, you'll also just find our page. So if you don't want to find the link, you can do it that way. So the idea of this is that in this tools section, you're going to find this. That's actually the Rens page has also a different one. That one's we'll get to that in a minute. But so this is what the species calendar looks like, and based upon the life stage is the color you can see down there, and then the over here is going to be your detectability as well. So the more filled in, the more detectable it is, and kind of what stage it's at. And you can make self-selecting. You can select some lists for what you care about, what season it is, what habitat it's in. Maybe it's just flowers or whatever. So this is a great thing when you're considering, for your local area. If you have a small list of species that you really care about and you're going off for a couple of months of surveying, you can kind of click through this thing and it'll give you a list you can print out that has the plant and what life form it's in and when it's easily detected. So you can kind of say, well, I would have seen this if it was here, versus being like, well, I wouldn't have seen that either way, even if it was, if it's wild chervil in November, it's new, but The way you read these two for the, for the ones that have two, like garlic mustard and wild chervil, those are going to be something that are going to be biennials that bolt usually. So they're around for 2 years. And that second year, they flower and they pop up. So that first year, they're kind of small and just on the ground. So it gets detailed, but it's a cool thing. This is a new one that I made this last year. We're calling it the Clearinghouse, and it's an early detection list is the idea. So something that I made with a bunch of really good local biologists from University of Wisconsin Extension, and we often get these questions about what we should look for. And these if we have 260 different species we care about, how do you focus that list if you're just going to look at five, or you care about just diseases? So I worked on this with a bunch of, like I said, experts, including my lab, which does plants. These things, you have a short list of the most kind of high consequence things, and a map, usually EdMaps, but often other federal resources or local resources that make sense. And so this has been curated by this group of people. PJ Leash of UW-Madison, Paul Skowinski of UW Stevens Point, and Brian, he's extensions. So yeah, we're proud of that. So if you want to check that out, that's in our that big QR code will get you there. Otherwise, it's in our tools section as well. New one that also did last year is this new scoping invasive species, Train the Trainer. So it really kind of became more of a way for me to just explore my web page more clearly. So, but you can kind of pop to this thing, and you're going to find that tools tab keeps popping up. Some narratives, some pictures, a video from my predecessor about invasive plants that's really quite good with a small modification from me. And then these big black buttons, you can kind of hop around different parts of my website, and they kind of all link together. So it's more of a curated look at the web. So Learn tab, Report tab, ID impacts, and then that tools again. So, and I'm going to focus right now also on that's on the Rensweed Science tab. Sorry, that slide was out of order. So that other tools page from Rensweed Science will take you to this county occurrence map, and this is something else we developed this last year. You can click on any of these counties, and it will get you to a table that looks, and that's the link there to Renz again. It looks something like this, though it's going to have just one county. And so the way you read this is, it's your species, it's the frequency is the number of times that it's been detected in that county, and then this is also common name, and then over here is if it's restricted, or if it's split list. So restricted would mean it's split listed, so it's not always restricted. And then if it says WISC recommendation, that's looking ahead to the change in NR40 that's happening 2027 or 2028. So the council for the state has already moved forward on that, but it takes a ton of time to get it into law. So we built in that recommendation so people can, in the nursery business or whatever, can keep an eye on it if it's going to change for their planning. And what's cool is then each one of these is going to have they're going to be hot linked. You can click on the name, and it goes to EdMaps, and that's going to be a live version. So the list is going to be static, but when you click on the EdMaps link, those are going to be updated records. So as soon as they're verified in the state, or wherever it is, they're going to appear. So that way we can have a kind of a real-time version of this, of the maps and the things that we care about based upon detections in this program from 1900 to 2024. So that's the idea. All right, I'm gonna let's see, just take a moment here. It's 45 minutes, so I'm just gonna give a moment and say we're gonna get into EdMaps here, which I think is really cool. And so if you are multitasking and you want to have your computer open, if you want to go ahead and open up edmaps.org if you're not familiar with it, I would encourage everyone in the room to get an account, and do that with for yourself with maybe your work email, your personal email, not like a general info at email, because when the records come into me, I do look at who is reporting it. And so Mike knows his stuff, and if it's him, that's one thing. If it's John Q Public at yahoo.com or whatever, then I'm a little more skeptical. So I'm just gonna moment of zen, drink some water here. Okay, now that I've thoroughly distracted you with your computers, I will. This is the EdMaps tutorial. I've given this a few times, so it's going to be pretty focused on the mobile application version of it, and there's really great tools and resources on that web page as well. So and there's tools and training. So when I say EdMaps, this is what it stands for. It's kind of annoying because there's two D's and it whatever, but it was some kind of like inside joke that I don't understand why they named it this, and it was explained to me, and I still didn't understand. So, anyways, that's what it is. This is based out of the University of Georgia, and it's called Bugwood. Is the app like the team that does this program? It's free to use. It's now in Canada, and they're hoping to get in Mexico, and there's even talk about like Europe right now. But right now, it's really focused on the Americas for its functionality. So I'm going to run through an example of making a record that I made when I was doing a eradication for something called pestilence wart. It's what everyone wants in their backyard, right? Break out the pestilence wart. So it's or butterfly dock. It's actually a really pretty plant. It just has these massive leaves, and it is a problem up north too. Anyways, so you pick your species. You put the date in. That's really important. And then there's other things you can rank. If it's not red, you don't have to do it. So you can say if it's flower or whatnot, and then you can kind of do your acres. Again, that's drop downs that you can use, but you don't have to. What I love about it is that then I can draw a polygon, and that will give me my acres and it will also give the lat long centroid, like right where in the middle of the polygon is. So if you're in the field and you have your phone out, you can do that. Or if you're back in the office and you're doing it, you can zoom in on Google Maps right in the app and make a little box where you know it is. And it really helps with estimating acreage, because I otherwise am pretty vague or off on it. If you can't see the back 40, you're kind of just estimating from far away, especially if your access is limited. So we did eradicate this successfully, thanks to the guy at Stonewall. Really cool nursery for some cool trees. So recommend him. He's cool to work with. He's cool with me sharing all this. So once you make this record and you add some pictures or whatever too, you're going to have a permanent dashboard of all of your records. And so that is once they're reviewed in public, you can share that link across boundaries or across different people. So it's really nice to have that ability to have that geolocated. You have a picture that you upload at the same time. Ooh. Okay, thank you. Hey Ryan, how you doing? Anyways, so it's nice to have that permanent log, and I often will recommend it for people if they have other ways to report it they have to do anyways. This is great for data management because you can have it right in your pocket, and you can make these records and come back to them, and they're going to have your lat longs for you. They're going to have your photos associated and a stable link URL, that you don't have to host or worry about. It's just on their back end, and they do it for free. So let's talk about the app versions of these. I'm an Android guy, I will admit, and nothing wrong with the iPhone either. They're kind of slick. The apps look a little bit different depending upon what you're in. So the functionality is the same, but they're kind of integrated to that particular digital ecosystem. No reason you can't have both of these apps. The EdMaps period is simpler to use, and it's going to have live updated maps for each species. And it's just a little more streamlined. EdMaps Pro is a little chunkier to set up on the backside. You have to go into your profile and select your counties and download that data. But you can download that data and then be in an offline area and still see map data. So especially if you're in like really backcountry areas or on a big lake where you don't have much service or whatever, the EdMaps Pro can be really good, a little more robust. You can have them both, two flavors. So it looks something like this. So we're talking about, honeysuckle vine here. And so there's going to be photos and images. There's going to be a live map that's updated with all their current records. And then it's easy to make a report. So you can kind of see that little functionality on the right there, that you can name it. You can on the online app, on the apps, you can actually select multiple species. And we do request that you take a picture of everything that you're reporting so that we can know that it's the right thing. So we do look at those to verify it. And my lab does that for the state of Wisconsin for plants. And then I redirect people that do insects and diseases and other aquatic stuff as it comes up. So easy to use. You save that record. You can drop that pin. I'll show you how to do that. So with your smartphone, you can also do negative surveys, so which is kind of cool. So if you didn't see something, that's also useful information. And this is going to be kind of how you do your other surveys too. So what you do is, you zoom in, you can either do a point, you can draw a circle with your finger, or you can do vertices, and that's really cool way to capture your area of interest. You got to make sure you upload it after you're done. And I know this is kind of a crash course, but I do want to also say, the best way to do it is there's on this training page, there's tons of documents and videos and webinars and presentations about all these different tools. It's a really, really powerful tool, and so people use it for a ton of insect reporting, especially if you see something for the first time that's on that prohibited list or that's really new. And your eyes on the ground, your eyes in the forest are really important because you're part of the world really well. And I don't necessarily have permission, nor have I walked the same trail for 30 years and know when a new plant pops up that's taking over and you're like, whoa, what is that? Is that kudzu? I got to call Matt, but or report it. And if it's not kudzu and it's something else, maybe we can figure it out. And that's where community science comes into play, is having more eyes out there, more experts, more people that are passionate about protecting their sacred places. And that is who is in the room right now. So this is the goal. You fellas over there by the trucks, report the trees, eh? So you need a gigantic tablet as well. Actually, you don't, but you can get this for your tablet or your other kind of formats, as long as you get the App Store, or the desktop version works quite well too. All right, kind of recapping here. So research what you got. Here's some ideas about some links, some clicks. You can always ask us, and stay curious, stay positive. Keep protecting those spots. I know it's a big fight. I feel that way too. But it's job security. So hopefully we'll all be around in the room doing this for years to come and making the difference. Protecting those sacred areas and those high ecologically important areas from things that might not play well with their neighbors as we would like. Our big push right now too is that we're about ready to maybe see the spotted lanternfly pop up, which is this really pretty insect here. Amber was saying that one of her friends thought she saw one. And so if you see a live one, it's a big deal because they've not actually been detected live in Wisconsin. They're all over Pennsylvania, Ohio. A guy from the Department of Health in Ohio called me yesterday. It's like, we talk about spotlight. I'm like, sure, I'm not in your area, but I'll still help you out. But so they look like this right now. They're this bright red. They're getting to be this bright red, kind of cool looking insect, and they are kind of poisonous. They're not preferred by our birds. They have this kind of weird toxin that they make. They have to eat the tree of heaven. So if you just put an SLF DATCAP or there's good resources to report that. So that's the one that we're really focused on for this kind of cycle, as we have not seen it yet. And also box tree moth. I know you all know more about insects and threats than I do, really, because of in your local regions. I follow along, but Kat and I have 3 or 4 that I focus on that affect plants and mostly talk about plants. And so, with that, thank you once again for having me and for being in the room. And I'm happy to take some questions and listen and answer as I can. My office does go right to my cell phone. So if you want to call me, otherwise, you can email me as well. I'm listening how to get a hold of me about all that stuff. And I would recommend just giving it a try. It's something that what it is at EdMaps. You got some garlic mustard, you got some buckthorn, you got some some Eurasian water milfoil in your pond, and you know what it is. It's Phragmites. You know, Phragmites is confusing because of the native, but make some records. I look at the records. I get the records back to you, and you can click on them at that point, and do that geolocation for your friends and your colleagues and your fellow tribes and whatnot. So I appreciate those records coming in, and we do take it really seriously for getting them verified and for making sure they're correct, and working with you to make sure that the tool is useful. So always welcome feedback for how you're using it, or if you need more training or another, you know, even a phone call about how, like, getting things set up. I'm happy to do that for you. So is
Thank you, Matt.
you bet. And we got about 10 minutes or so, I think, on our slotted time. So got some time for questions. And I'll leave my screen up so I can go to this correct slide if we need to. But anybody have anything that off the top of their head from all those tools or those trainings that you'd like to learn more about?
Hey, Matt. Thanks. This is Mike. So right now, EdMaps is really being used for invasive plants
Yes.
and animals and insects as well.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Um, Not for anything else, say like wild mushrooms or medicinal plants or anything like that.
That is in there. To some extent, they're expanding more into native plants and kind of all plants and insects, because they realize that. So each state kind of has its own list of what they consider invasive and what kind of is going to load into the mobile version of the app, which is something we're always working to make sure is correct for focuses. But yeah, the actual breadth is always expanding, and so we try to make sure that we're on top of it. However, if we actually work with them quite closely in my lab, and we recommend that they add things, and like, you realize that this doesn't exist yet, and making sure the common name is there. iNaturalist tends to be more kind of the you know, not focused on invasive species. It's really more, it's for everything. And
Okay.
iNaturalist does occasionally get pulled into EdMaps, but it takes a bunch of heavy lifting from like my team and us to like look at records that might not have a photo, or they're like not necessarily as high quality as you know. And we don't want to verify things we don't think it's actually real. We don't have any proof, right? So that's kind of an important consideration.
Well, my only concern would be like maybe sticking to the invasive plants for us. I don't know if we'd want to put everything out there because this is a public facing,
Mm-hmm. Excellent point, though,
thing.
which is to say
So,
that, yeah, no, what's cool though is that that's an excellent point, especially for privacy issues. There is a way that you can make records private. So there's a privacy like setting on there.
okay.
And then what happens is, so I'll get to see it, but then I'm not going to mess with it because I have to verify it still. And then the record would just only show up if you search for it at the county level, and it wouldn't ever put a point anywhere.
Oh,
So it kind of obscures that. So, you know, they still say, okay, yeah, you got this really cool rare thing. But I think that's the right move, is that, you know, maybe if you're doing records of stuff that's good, just don't mess with it. You know, don't report it. So here, I'm going to actually show you how this works online real quick too. So you just go to report sightings, and it's just like I said. So I'm signed in, and it knows who I am, because I'm a verifier. Plants, and then, you know, Wisconsin, and then it'll kind of filter down. So this is the exact form, and so this is kind of how you can make up here. You pick your polygon type. You know, boom, boom. Now I'm not going to submit this because that's huge, but you know, it does my math for me. That's a lot of acres. So Wapaka County. So it's kind of cool that way, and it's really fast. And the app, the online version of that on your phone, I can definitely that one like a truck signal. If someone's going to wave me through on like a bridge, I can make a record in like 2 minutes. You know, while I'm sitting there. Trainings is really, really cool. We're almost out of time too. This is a training thing. So this is all these PowerPoints and videos are awesome. And then the tools section, this is probably one of the best things. There's all these different ways you can utilities, and you can do bulk uploads. I can help you with that. Your dashboard. So the query though, you type in your parameters, make sure you got the dates right, and your species if you want. And we're just going to do just Wisconsin. Okay. And so, but this is going to be like your live pop up. So this is going to be every record in the last month that came through in Wisconsin. And so when you zoom in, they blow up like this. And people will do this for negative surveys for insects for their whole project. You can also do treated. You can revisit things and go back to that, which is really, really cool. So if you actually kill something or eradicate it, you can make that. You can update it. You can take more pictures. And then last thing is my dashboard. So if I go back to my ed maps, this is where you kind of do the back end work. So I have verifier and admin tools that you might not have. This is where you'd set up EdMaps Pro over here, and then you can kind of look at your different reports and kind of see what's new in your work. So I just made this one, and this is what my record looks like. So pictures, infestation, a close up for verification. And then you can see I did this in the field with making that polygon on the road. So so that's EdMaps is great. I recommend trying it out, using it. It's fun in a way. It's a little game on your phone, and again, you get feedback from me and my team if you're right or not, and no judgment. Just get out there and do it. That's what's important. So we got 3 minutes left until Teams has decided we are a team. Ryan, nice to meet you, man. Virtually. Hope to see you out in the field someday.
Nice to meet you too, and sorry for being so late.
No worries, man. We recorded it for you too. So and then I couldn't get into Teams, and we started 10 minutes late anyway. So what is time? Any other last thoughts? Thanks everyone again for being here. How do you say goodbye in your language of choice? If you're listening.